Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. And today we're going to look at Cardano and Bitcoin once again and some of what's going to be possible, hopefully, in the not too distant future. I have a fairly familiar face from around the Cardano ecosystem with me today. I'm delighted to be able to get some of Sheldon's time. So, Sheldon, you're very welcome and looking forward to getting into this.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much for having me, man. It's a great honor to be on the show.
Look, I'm going to say that a lot of people watching this are going to know who you are or know of you, but do you want to give the introduction and then we'll get into what you've been working on and what you're looking to get into now?
Yes, yeah, well, absolutely. Well, so I think most people will probably know me from my Emergo days. I'm actually finishing up with Emergo literally the end of this year. So cap it off on New Year's Days. But it isn't the total end. I'll continue on in an advisory role. So looking forward to that. But in terms of being an employee, that will be the end. But yeah, like I was saying, I think most people know me from Emergo. However, I know some of those who are maybe more on the governance maxi side of things will know that I've been involved in helping to build up Intersect before that, and actually IOG previous to that. So it's part of the Voltaire team, working with Charles and Jack and a lot of other big brains to design all the fun stuff that's now been cooked into SIP 1694 and the Age of Voltaire and everything that's kind of going live. So kudos to everybody in Argentina now ratifying the Constitution. It's great to see this basically kind of come to fruition and then go out live into the world. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, I was a bit jealous seeing the different tweets of people going to Argentina and looking out at the rain here in Ireland, but I can't get everywhere. But yeah, you've definitely been around a lot of different areas within the Cardano ecosystem, which I think is great. You have a lot of experience in different aspects and understand how different entities, I suppose, work because you have the experience with Emergo, with IO, and that should all stand. When I seen the tweets that you were stepping down from Emergo, I was a little bit sad to see that from the Emergo side. There definitely has been a more positive that it's from the community side. It has looked, Emergo have looked a lot better since you joined them. They've definitely stepped up. I think communications have been a lot better. And I'm glad to hear that you will still have a voice there because I think that is important because a lot of people have noticed the difference there. So where is your focus turning to now? What's next for yourself? Obviously, I mentioned Bitcoin at the start, but where's the journey taking you now?
Yes, well, so I've had a wonderful time with Emergo these last several months, working with partnerships and looking to build out the ecosystem. And so the next step for myself, and this is why I felt I needed to leave Emergo, is to kind of take a more expansive jump and to actually get my hands dirty in doing something a little bit more ambitious, and that is to go out and work with the wonderful guys at Anastasia Labs and a number of other companies and build out a fairly expansive layer two, but one that is specific in its target, and that is to go and to service, well, all of those various UTXO chains that currently don't really have much in the way of smart contracts or DeFi or anything, but have massive amounts of liquidity and lots of holders, and there's a lot going on or potentially could be going on there. And so the idea is to, yeah, build on Cardano the essentially the smart contract abstraction DeFi layer, I guess you could say, for all UTXOs. But obviously the big one being Bitcoin. So that's where we got to start. And so very excited to kind of go in with more like an institutional focus for, yeah, building out Bitcoin services on Cardano.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and since the summit this year, there's a lot more people talking about the potential of what's there with Bitcoin and Cardano and BitcoinOS. This was the announcements at the summit really kicked off a lot of this. But for what you're doing, is it? You mentioned Phil there. Phil's been on the channel, I think twice, maybe three times at this point. Love having him on for the tech side of things. I learn a lot every time he is, especially around ZK and roll ups and what's possible. But is that your focus, is building the tech on the Cardano side, or where will you be?
Yeah, well, so I will be myself. I think I've got more of like a personal interest and a skill set when it comes to building together like alliances and actually building at the business side of things. And so uh, in all of this, really, I'm just trying to activate all of the big gigantic gigabrains that we have in the ecosystem to kind of come on board and augment their strengths to build it something quite substantial. So obviously we got Phil and the guys at Anastasia Labs, but also Mateo and Rio over on the Fluid Token side of things, Marvin from Maestro, and a lot of others who are kind of cooking in the background, and more that will be announced in the next little while. So really just kind of like being, I guess, a bit of a general and kind of moving the pieces about and kind of getting things all together, and then continuing on with what I've done before and have been doing with Emergo, which is a bit of like blockchain diplomacy. I like to pull in new blood, new interest, bridge over to other chains, and maybe activate people who have been on the sidelines, have looked in at Cardano, but maybe haven't come over as of yet. I want to give them something new to look at, and I think this would be a very attractive proposition for them.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned a few other names there as well as Phil, like Marvin and the guys at Fluid who've been looking at the guys over at Fluid. I think have been looking at the Bitcoin integrations for a good few months, maybe a year, even at this point. So they're definitely good guys to have on board there. And so you'll be kind of just coordinating the ideas between these and outsourcing, I suppose, work to the teams, is it?
Yeah, well, because I'm not really much of a coder myself. I'm not a super technical guy. Uh, so best for me not to go and start messing around with smart contracts when I couldn't really tell you the top or the bottom of it. Just don't want to break anything. It's just too important. So got to leave it to the experts. And so, yeah, leave it to those guys, and I will do what I know to be kind of like in my skill set, and that is the human components, the business side of things, the partnerships, and so much more. So
You have you have a proposal in for the current catalyst. I suppose I can bring that up. It gives us more of a layout or a structure of what the overall plan is going to look like. So institutional grade layer 2 for Bitcoin DeFi on Cardano, collaboration with BitcoinOS, Tesseract, and more. We'll come to the BitcoinOS part in a minute. But are you building a layer 2 on Cardano if this proposal gets funded, or how does that work?
Yes, yeah. So if this proposal gets funded, and please everybody go vote for me. I'm not going to be shy about it. I would really like your support in this. But yeah, so if I get the funding, fingers crossed, the plan is to work with those said partners that I mentioned before and get going on actually building out this layer 2. So the whole idea is actually to work with Anastasia Labs and have this be essentially like built in parallel with Midgard. And then obviously there's going to be components that need to be built out on top of that. And it is going to be fairly expansive. And so it will take some time. Got to be realistic. It will take quite a bit of funding. Got to be realistic about that as well. We've seen other layer 2s in the Ethereum world cost quite a lot. And so we think that for this, it's basically kind of like the basic kind of max value you can get in Cardano with people who put passion first and foremost and just get into the trenches and grind it out. So yeah, that's the plan, to have this layer 2. And like what I should mention that's quite important in all of this is that there might be this idea of like a token that will go with this, but that is not essential. Like that's still, it's got to be worked out in the nitty gritty parts of the tokenomics, which are being worked on right now. But you got to do it right, because to retroactively go back and do tokenomics later on, you're setting yourself up to fail. You're going to be screwed. So best to do it right the first time. And that means kind of taking your time and bringing in some experts. And so when it comes to like the token side of things, we might actually have no token just to start off with. And discuss this with Phil and a lot of other guys, that we can actually just have ADA be essentially the asset that is transacted with. It is like the fee structure. So I imagine that will be locked in. That's how we're going to keep it going, because we've seen it go bad on the Ethereum side, where the L2s just cannibalize the base layer just because they're not really looking to kind of give anything back, which is terrible in my mind. And because the base layer of Cardano is so damn good, there's no need to do that. We have to be pumping back to Papa Cardano here. So it's got to work.
Yeah, and just actually, will this... I know when I had Phil on before, he talked about that Midgard was the first to show what was possible with the protocol that they were building. Does this replace Midgard, or is this just using what Midgard built and this will be its own version of a layer 2?
Yes, no way would we be replacing Midgard. no way. They're just doing too much of good stuff over there. The idea is just to have like a bunch of other such a clones of Midgard later on, and to get the tooling in place to allow for others to do this. Because we are in a very interesting place. Because even like partner chains, side chains, L2s, we want these things. Everybody's working on them, but there's still going to be like a few months away. It's still going to be a bit of like a grind here, maybe even like years in some cases, just because we got to be realistic about tech timelines. Things take time. But for the L2, like Midgard has been making a lot of really good progress. Well, I should say Anastasia Labs has been making good progress on Midgard. And they're now, not to kind of like, you know, throw them out there, but I believe the idea was that looking at 6-7 months to testnet and then additional months added on top of that for kind of like running through the testnet, making sure everything is secure. And so, yeah, in this proposal, I'm hoping that things kind of kick off in January, and we're looking at like a 9-month kind of window to get to testnet. And the idea is at that point, we're going to have all of this is open sourced, be it with Anastasia Labs and with this project here. And so would encourage anybody else to kind of go out there and try to do it themselves and try to build additional L2s.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely due a catch up fairly soon with Phil to find out the latest on Midgard and I suppose everything else that they're working on over there. But just to take a step back to, you mentioned a token there. In the last few days, there's been a lot of talk about BitcoinOS and a token. And when you reference a token, you're not talking about a BitcoinOS token, are you?
No. Well, because yeah, for different projects, they're going to need a token, and sometimes they're not going to need a token. It's going to be up to individual teams to like make those decisions, and then also the users are they're going to be people who want to kind of like buy these tokens and kind of commit to the particular vision of this project. And so, with all of this, specific to like the proposal here, so calling it Sundial, and if there is going to be a Sundial token, the whole plan in place was that it would be essentially like an incentive token to airdrop to those who are involved in the testnet, to be involved in kind of rewarding those who come in and play around, and that it would also be used as an incentive to draw in Bitcoin holders and others later on, of course, who want to come in and play, because um, we're not going to be in a position with any like Bitcoin that comes over to kind of essentially endlessly restake it for more Bitcoin. You've got to have another kind of token of value. And so going and having it, Bitcoin being utilized in DeFi, it might require additional tokens. And then another part here to consider for everybody is having validation done. Because I know this is something that Charles had talked about a while ago about having partner chains and side chains, L2s, be able to create additional revenue streams for those who are SBOs and running nodes. And the idea here is want to provide an additional revenue stream, have another kind of token potentially come back to help everybody who's securing not just Cardano now, but also all of these layer twos. And so that's the idea. But once again, we'll have to see. Like, I need to lock in the tokenomics first. So can't make promises because, like I was saying, this stuff is so damn important.
The plan is to have ADA as the, in Cardano we don't call it gas, but more people are familiar with. That's what you'll be using to pay for transactions on the layer 2 to start anyway, would it?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. And I like the idea of having an incentivization for Bitcoin users to come in and deploy their capital, because you can build the greatest tech in the world, but if there's not incentives for people to come in, it's like stable coins on Cardano right now. We have stable coins, but we haven't seen a huge amount of liquidity yet, but there isn't that many yield opportunities or bigger yield opportunities to encourage people to mint the stable coins and get involved. So like that, we need to give people incentives to come in, deploy their capital, and then that kind of kicks off more people coming in, more people getting interested, more opportunities. Easier said than done, obviously. But what about then? So the timeline you mentioned there was hopefully kicking off in January, testnet after 9 months, is it?
Yes. Yeah. That would be the whole plan. Because, yeah, it does take time. You got to be realistic. If we can do it faster, oh, beautiful. But I do know that when it comes to tech of this scale, it's not really a question of just like throwing more money at the problem and then just hire 5 more developers and get it done twice as fast. That's not really how it works in this industry. There is so much that goes into the back end for testing and tooling. And so sometimes you just have to kind of grind it out the slow way. And so got to be prepared for that. Got to be fully transparent. But once again, I hope that we can get the funding and hope we can kind of hit the ground running, link up with these other guys, build upon the great tooling that's already been done, plug in ultimately a lot of like the other applications like fluid tokens and others, and ensure that when we do go to testnet, there's a lot for people to play with.
Okay. And so that's with dApps that are already on the Cardano layer 1, would people be able to interact with them through Sundial, or would the apps be deployed on Sundial layer 2 for users to interact with?
Well, I would hope, and once again, it's kind of like up to individual projects to make that decision. Can't hold a gun to anybody's head and say, pick or die. I would like to see a situation where they're on both, where there might be an advantage to actually being on a layer 2. Maybe it is for kind of like speed. Maybe it is for kind of like mass minting. There's a number of different things that could be done there. With this L2, because we want to basically cloak it in the image and the shining appeal of Bitcoin, for those who maybe want to come in for maybe like a more Bitcoin centric component to their project, you come and do it here on Sundial. And so those would be some of the ways I could imagine this could be done. But yeah, ultimately, I want to have it be such an easy thing to interact with and to transition to that projects don't even really think much about it, that they're deployed on both and we're off to the races. I wouldn't ever be in a position, like I was mentioning, where make anybody choose, because yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I know
permissions.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I talked to Phil, he said about that at times of high load on the layer 1, you might be able to offset some of it with Midgard being able to take pools and things to
Correct.
offset them to the layer 2, have the interactions happen there, and then back to the layer 1, which I think is great interoperability. And look, even taking a step back from this, the UI UX of all of these things are going to be so important. You're going to hopefully have Bitcoin users that don't care that they're using Cardano tech or don't care that they're using Sundial. They just know that there is secure tech underneath it, that when they get involved in DeFi through their Bitcoin wallets, that they have more opportunities. And to me, that's taking it all back to that is going to be the major success or failure point of a lot of different projects like that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's something that Charles talked about in a video just the other day about Bitcoin, and specifically having within wallets just that nice, easy kind of button to kind of toss your Bitcoin over. And that's the whole vision here with Sundial, that people can be bridging over and not really knowing what's going on underneath the hood, but it just works. It's got to be seamless and it's got to have like a great user experience. And so that'll be front and center in my mind for all of this. We've already got some great wallets, and I should shout out to the guys at Tokyo, what they've been doing with their wallet and actually having Bitcoin integrated there. And I know many other wallets in Cardano are going to be doing the same. So it's great that we already have the work that's kind of going towards this interoperability play, where it'll make plugging into Sundial and switching between the various chains to utilize your assets and have them go further. It's wonderful. So.
Yep. And then I suppose having things like Babel fees and everything that the user can pay within. So when someone's on Bitcoin, they can pay with Bitcoin if they want. They don't have to pick up ADA and people or whatever is the token. And people worried that that means there isn't a use case for ADA. It still happens on the ledger level. It's still ADA pays for the transactions. There's mechanisms there. Fluid tokens have a way. I think Mint have one. Charles has talked recently about getting Babel fees into the ledger. And I think these opportunities, it's something from the first time I heard of Babel fees on Cardano, it's something I wanted to see pushed out. And every so often it puts its head back up. I think right now with all the talk of Bitcoin, it might just get the push to really be put out there.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a few different people now kind of getting behind it to push hard. So I know the guys over at Fluid Tokens have been making some really great strides on that in their own capacity. And so it's all coming together. And so I do believe early next year, so we're talking just like a few months now, we'll be in a pretty good spot where this is going to be tested out, and we're making some really serious progress to have it be rolled out across the mainnet.
Okay. And that's Babel fees, is it?
Yeah, Babel fees.
Nice. Any other aspects of the project that kind of would be good to put out there, or the vision of where it's going? I know Bitcoin is primary use case in the beginning, or the primary focus of bringing liquidity from there, but this could be any UTXO chain. Could it be EVM have the interoperability too?
Yes, yes. Well, so I'm personally, because I've been around in the industry for years and years. I was there at the beginning of Ethereum, and so I know how it all went together and know the strengths and the weaknesses of Ethereum. And I know really EVM, it's where all of the developers are. It's where a lot of the energy has been these last few years. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to throw all in to UTXO, just to have the UTX bros get together and make a more kind of coherent army of kind of soldiers that go out there and now actually kind of confront EVM dominance, because ultimately there is something to be said for the security that comes with UTXO. It's something that Vitalik often talked about back in the olden days, that it would be great to do it, but it's just too hard to build on. The amount of tooling that's been put together since then, of course, and obviously everything with the extended version of UTXO means that we're now in a spot where we shouldn't really be looking to EVM as like the gold standard for future development. I truly believe UTXO, sorry, are like the best way to go, just for security more than anything else. Obviously, there's liquidity, but the security component, like I don't believe we're going to have major conglomerates, major companies, or governments who are willing to put billions or potentially trillions of dollars on chain in EVM, where there is such a high rate of failure. There's still questionable hacks. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on chain, unfortunately. And you just don't really have that with UTXO. So there is something to be said for that. And so ultimately, I would like to start with Bitcoin, but get to a point where we're looking at Dogecoin, looking at Litecoin, looking at all of the others, and we're continuing to expand, get them all together under the wings of a super Cardano. So that's the plan. It's ambitious, but that's the plan.
Yeah, I suppose you look at even the developer experience on Cardano back when SundialSwap launched their DEX first, when we got smart contracts, they definitely weren't, I suppose, to the level that some were expecting smart contracts to launch at. But there's been huge developments in that, especially around developer tooling, and even with the way that projects, I know there was always the thing that you can't run DeFi on UTXO because of contention and different things that are there. But we've seen a lot of advancements in that and a lot of different approaches to it, that as developers are working on it more, as tooling gets better, there's a lot more solutions coming out there. And like that, not all DeFi has to be on the layer one. It can be, but for where I see, or the amount of different industries I want to see interacting with Cardano, they couldn't all run on the layer one. They can all have their own individual layer twos for different use cases. Like some require ultimate decentralization, security. Others are, say, gaming, not just as worried about decentralization and I was going to say safety, but they're all worried about safety, but it's less of a concern on something like gaming, where you're only saving game data or that, but you can still roll it back up to the layer one.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And actually, another shout out to do here, and that's to like the guys over at like book.io, or now I guess stuff.io, because having some good chats with them, where ultimately they want to be in a position where they've got some really great partnerships coming together, not just for novels with living artists and more expanded services there, but also with artists in, say, music. And if we're going to get to a point where we're going to have, say, the music industry and others in other like media entities come on chain, they're going to need to have the ability to mint potentially millions of NFTs, millions of tokens within minutes, seconds. And currently, we just can't do that on the main chain. So if we're getting ambitious and we look at what the future could potentially hold with having all of these global assets on chain, unfortunately, we just don't have the scalability currently today on Cardano base layer. So like it or not, we gotta kind of put the work in and actually start to push on these layer twos, because that's where we can actually get this stuff going.
Yeah, and I know that stuff they mint on Polygon and I think Algorand as well, and different chains, they let the user choose. But potentially, with what you're saying, that they could have their own layer two at some point, or them and others in the same industry, and everything happens there. It comes back again to the UI UX. users don't have to know that they're using the stuff.io layer 2 or whatever it is. It is just they're interacting with blockchain. It's the same wallet that does it. Just make that transition very easy. And even if we could mint them millions on Cardano base layer 1, do we really want to? Do we want to keep making the ledger absolutely massive, make it harder for other people who are trying to do different activities on chain? You can just push these things off, and then they can be handled with other chain or other layer 2s that still have the security of the base chain.
Yes, though that's exactly it. I think we're going to get to a point, and this is also kind of me kind of projecting into the future, right? If you're talking to your aunts, your uncles, cousins, it doesn't matter, anybody in the family about crypto, generally they just, besides like the speculation element of things, when they're using dApps, they just need to work. And they generally don't really care what chain it's on. Of course, those of us in Cardano who've been through the journey, we're particularly sensitive and loyal to like the amount of work that's gone in here, and we just love the product. And we need to make sure that that product is getting out into people's hands. And so, does it need to have the Cardano label on it going on into the future? Maybe not, but we'll leave that to projects and to individual people to make the decisions. But ultimately, I think like where we're at 5 years from now, it's going to be about the applications that are kicking ass that matter so much more than the piping in the back end. It was the same thing with the internet and a lot of the computers we use now. We don't really care about the back end operating systems. It just needs to work and it needs to be enjoyable. And just, yeah, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's like when you want to show how good Cardano is, we need the dApps on top of it to be at the top of their field or the top of whatever their sector is. And then it's they're running on Cardano, but it's the dApps that are the ones that get the initial attention. And they're the ones that the end user care about. They don't care about the underlying chain, but obviously there's the knock-on effect. If the dApp is secure, all is up, solid, then it's like, oh, well, that runs on Cardano. That's why it's able to offer what it does and doesn't go down, and you're not stuck for a few hours not being able to do anything. But any other aspects? Enjoyed the conversation, even talking outside the proposal, what's possible with UTXO and where you guys can take that to in your own area of this. But any other aspects of what you're doing that we didn't get into, or before we close out?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, so like I would like to kind of in the future, we want to see this kind of roll out and to get to a point where we can actually talk about kind of like the UTXO ecosystem, I guess you could say, where you can actually have, say, like Bitcoin gaming done on chain. I think that's going to be a pretty cool winning proposal. I know there's been a lot of attempts to do layer twos on Bitcoin. Certainly, like this last year, there's been a lot of attention around it, but it's hard to do. It's admittedly really hard to do. And there's got to be, once again, an acknowledgement for the work that's been done in Cardano over years now to solve for problems that are only now coming up for some of those guys trying to build on the Bitcoin side of things. So not to kind of pat ourselves too much on the back, but like, yeah, kudos once again to Cardano for taking the difficult road, but the correct one to grind it out and to now be ahead when it comes to some really cool applications with UTXOs. So I'm excited personally for what all of these rollups can do, where we now can take the momentum into 2025. I would like to see dedicated chains, like layer 2 chains, I should say, on Cardano that are specific to gaming. That's something near and dear to my heart for entertainment purposes. I know the guys, obviously, like Patrick over with NMaker, doing some really cool things and looking to do even like tokenized film and many other things. So it's an exciting time. And I know that we're all stronger actually working together and collaboratively here. And this is going to be one of those areas where the usual Cardano approach of like, oh, we've got 0 of something, let's go build 20 of it. But having like 20 layer 2s here, maybe it's not a bad thing, just because we've got so much in the way of like specialization that can be done. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
I think, yeah, you hit on a good point there that sometimes we get too many of the one application on Cardano and then it's like your competition, but in the bigger picture, you're not competition. Like the competition is out there outside of the Cardano ecosystem. When you look at the size of, it feels like we have a lot of people in here, but when you start to look at the wider crypto industry and even what is potentially to come over the next 10 years, it's massive. That's where the competition is. That's where we need to bring people in. And as long as we don't get 20 layer twos all doing the same thing, all competing for the same liquidity, which we've seen on Ethereum a bit too much, in that they're all fighting against each other instead of contributing. You said at the beginning, I think, contributing back to the layer one and giving something back, where if you just spread it out too thin, you can't really do that. So it's great to have alternatives, as long as it's kept that we have the few main ones that are good for certain aspects, and then others within different industries.
Yeah, well, that's it. So we'll see if we can kind of like set the tone the right way, and just the way like fees are currently structured on Cardano. It's not a big ask to kind of just have everything settled in ADA, and gotta always support the main chain. Always support the main chain.
That sounds good, and people can keep that in mind when they're looking at the different proposals. I will put a link to your proposal down below for people that are looking to start voting. Today, actually, as I record this, might be tomorrow by the time this comes out, but Catalyst voting is open now, and probably open for just under 2 weeks by the time this video comes out. Make sure you check out Sheldon's proposal on what they're looking to do with bringing Bitcoin users and other chains into Cardano, making it more interoperable for everybody. As well, I would encourage you to just get out, vote for different proposals within Catalyst that you feel are going to, for me, it's always enhance the developer experience, the user experience, and look to make it easier or more attractive for new people to come into the space. So Sheldon, once again, thanks very much for your time. I do appreciate it. You're more than welcome to come back on anytime you want to talk about the different aspects that you're working on, and best of luck with your path forward.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for having me, man. Great honor to be here, and looking forward to being back soon.
Sounds good. Everyone watching, please do share it out. Give the video a like, comment, ask questions down below. In the comment section, I will pass them on to Sheldon. I'll answer any that I can, and maybe we'll do a follow-up at some point too, if there's enough questions there. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.